Welcome to the Dom.Hockey Podcast, proudly presented by Bench Rates. Created by a former hockey player, Bench Rates uses a proprietary algorithm to assign a true monetary value to a player's on-ice contributions and lets you compare that value directly to his cap hit. Bench Rates evaluates professional players across leagues worldwide, including the NHL and AHL. Learn more at benchrates.com. Also presented by McKeen's Hockey. McKeen's produces the premier NHL draft guide featuring more than 200 player reports and comprehensive rankings. They also deliver in-depth prospect coverage through their annual team-by-team rankings and their trusted hockey pool yearbook. Visit mckeens.com and subscribe for just $16.50 Canadian for 3 months. Good Saturday morning to everybody out there. It is time for another episode of Dom.Hockey the Podcast. And with me, of course, is the one and only Mr. Dominic Tiano. Dom, we had a nice 4-hour draft first round yesterday. How are you doing today after that?
Good. It was wild, eh? What a wild week leading up to the draft and then draft day. Pretty exciting. Gotta love what San Jose did if you're a San Jose fan, man. Boy, that team's going to be a juggernaut.
Oh, they're going to be stacked for a while. And then, of course, right before it all gets underway, the Boston Bruins jump in with a draft day trade, acquiring JJ Peterka. But I know that's not where you want to start. You want to start with, there was a report that went out. It came out from Hockey Pipeline. They can be found on Twitter at Hockey Pipeline. And it was a report card for draft scouting. Before I pull up the graphic, what are some of the thoughts that made this stick out to you?
I guess basically how our friends at McKeen's are underrated or don't get enough attention paid to them when it comes draft time in their draft guide. But if you put the graphic up, you can see that they're there with Bob McKenzie since 2015 on being the most accurate, I guess, guide that's out there. So credit to Brock Otten, who is the head scout there over at McKeen's. Link, who we had on the show last week. Thanks to him once again for the work he's done. But, just a nice shout out to McKeen's being respected out there.
Yeah, and the fact that they have a top 10 hit rate of 85% puts them up there with anybody. So definitely a very underrated organization, I think. Not very many people reference them, in my opinion. So definitely check them out. And it was a great episode last week with Link. So if you want to know about any of those first round picks, any of today's picks even, we definitely have some good info out there from you and him from last week's episode. But beyond that, we had the draft, which was, like I said, 4 hours, almost 4.5 for the first round.
Mm-hmm.
And Boston didn't even have a pick, so I'm sure most Bruins fans didn't stick around for that after that 23rd overall pick went to Utah. I think that's a good place to start, because that was the biggest news of yesterday, was the acquisition of JJ Peterka. First of all, thoughts on the deal and thoughts on how he fits.
Well, first of all, on the deal, I like the pick or the trade. I don't know that they would have got somebody at 23 that would bring the offense that JJ Peterka can bring.
Mm-hmm.
I like that he's only 24 years of age, so not only does he fit in with this group, but the next group. What is he? Only 2 years older than, or 4 years older than? Hagen's.
Yeah, he's 24. So yeah, he essentially fits both cores, this current one and the next one.
Yeah. So he adds the speed that they're looking for. He adds the skill that they're looking for. He's great at zone entries. He's great at possession once he gains the zone. Um, his B game is lacking, not to the point of a Morgan Geeky, which I wrote about this morning. Um, but we know Marco Sturm is big on details and the system. So we'll see if he and the rest of his coaching staff are able to bring that out of him. But certainly, we don't know where he's going to play. We know he'll be in the top six if he's playing with Pasternak. Um, Pasternak can go back to being a goal scorer. He won't be forced to be making plays all the time, which, let's face it, sometimes players that can't finish. So, Peterka's also a driver, so they may decide to split the two up. It remains to be seen how he's going to be utilized. But the 28 pick, who knows what's going to? It's probably going to be a late pick again. So I'm fine with that. But you were, I don't think you were getting a Peterka at 23 in the draft this year.
No, and if you found one, it would be 3 or 4 years out that guy gets onto your NHL roster at any point. So it doesn't fit the same timeline as getting JJ Peterka now. And like you said, both of those first round picks are probably back half of the draft. This one's already definitely 23rd, and then the Florida one in 2028, easily back half. If it's not back half, then it's top 10 protected and you get it anyway.
Yeah. So
the fail-safe is there that everybody was looking for. So I don't see how that could be upsetting to too many people. But yeah, I'm glad you mentioned there was a line during Don Sweeney's post first round draft availability where he mentioned that JJ Peterka was a line driver during his time in Buffalo, and that he can play both sides. So I do like the flexibility that this gives him, because I think immediately everybody goes back to they have to trade Pavel Zacha, but there's plenty of options on this roster that you can still move around and still have some flexibility. I mean, right now they're still approximately $7 million under the cap ceiling.
Yeah, well, it depends on whose numbers you use. Like,
that's why I said approximately.
People are worried about now they can't go out and get a defenseman because they don't have the cap space. Well, yeah, they do, because you can go over the cap by 10% in the off season and worry about it later. So, but if they're using Hagens on left wing, you got Hagens, you got Middlestat, you got Hustadinov, you've got Jeannot, and then you add in Peterka and Geeky. One of them is going to the right side, and it's probably Geeky.
That's what I thought.
Which means this likely means the end of Victor Arvidsson. He probably won't be back. You're blocking. You've now blocked the opportunity for Matthew Poitras to be on the roster.
Well, one of the things that you had previously mentioned about Poitras is putting him on the fourth line between Kastelik and Jeannot. Is that something that you're kind of coming off of?
Well, no, but it still means moving out a player. I mean, they've already got to find a home for Michael Eyssimont. Yeah. He's not going to be on the roster.
Is he someone that you're comfortable losing on waivers at the end of camp if necessary?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. That's how I feel about him. That's how I feel about him. But I just, everybody's here for your opinion more so than mine. So just because I feel that way, as long as you feel that way, I think we can get Bruins Nation on board on that one.
The guy barely played last year. So what's the point of having him around? I don't think the Bruins are done.
Oh, I
Um,
would be shocked if they were. I would be
I th-
shocked if they went through today and picked every single person or every single pick that they already have in line and did
no,
nothing else.
I think I don't think they're going to use all three fourth round picks. They're going to possibly combine it with something to move up. If there's a player that they really like, but I can't foresee them using all three fourth round picks. But I also think that between now and July 1st, uh, they're going to try and make another move. I think the guy most likely to be moved would be Casey Middlestat up front, simply because they're loaded on the left side right now. Um,
Yeah, you might not be wowed by the return you get for him, but at this point, that roster spot, that spot in the lineup itself holds a lot of value for this team.
yeah, yeah. So um, at that point, then you move Middlestat. You got Hagens, you got Paterka, you got Husnadine up, and you got Janot as your four left wingers. If their intention is to start Hagens on the left side, which I think it is. Um, then down the middle, you got Lindholm, you got Zaka, you got Minton, and you got Corrali. If they're intent on giving Patra a spot, then Corrali's the guy to go, and they'll look for a move there. And then on the right side, you'd have Pasternak, you'd have Geeky, you've got Kastelik, and you know Alex Steves.
Yeah, Steve's. I mean, Janot can play on the right side.
Yeah,
That means you might be able. You got Easymont. We mentioned like there's some options there, and then of course you mentioned Victor Arvidsson. Don Sweeney said that he doesn't feel like they're out on Arvidsson. Obviously, I feel like that's a move that would come after their next move. If
yeah,
they're still truly trying to re-sign Arvidsson, that's not going to happen until they know can they move off of Mason Lohrei, Casey Middlestat. Do they decide to move off of Pavel Zacha? Like that's in my opinion, I think that's the only way that you get Arvidsson done is if you get Middlestat off this roster.
yeah. You pretty much have to. Um, but you also need part of that if they're going to go after, let's say, a John Carlson, for an example. You got to
Mm-hmm.
make a move to get the cap space to do it. Otherwise, they wouldn't. So, I think there's another move to come. Um, I was on with Court Lalonde yesterday morning on his podcast and talked a bit about San Jose and the Andre Gasseau trade to San Jose. There was more to that deal that didn't get done, and they're likely revisiting it. And my understanding, and I talked to Court a couple of days before the trade actually went down. Um, and I know you're going to get me to throw names out or try to get me to throw names
That's
out
my
there,
job.
Chris.
That's what they
But
will. That's why they listen to me is because I try to get info from you, but I know you won't give it.
I won't give it. I don't even give it to you off record. So um, the deal was obviously Gasol was in there and picks, but they were looking to move a player to San Jose, which required San Jose to make another deal someplace else to move a player and open up a roster spot. Um, which also included San Jose trying to get Boston's third round pick back from Columbus next year and flip it to Boston, which
Screams offer sheet move.
screams offer sheet. So, you know, they could revisit it. They probably are revisiting it. But San Jose's got to be in a spot right now where they're ecstatic about what happened with them yesterday. So I don't know how far they're willing to go.
Yeah, and obviously we don't know how much their moves yesterday may have potentially made some adjustments to their plans. Obviously, you know,
Yeah,
if it's something they have to revisit, then I'm sure Sweeney will do his job, call, revisit with it, and say where are things at with this. But at the end of the day, if the deal doesn't come to fruition, it's Boston. That info is probably never going to get out. And if we hear about
Right.
it, it'll be in 6 months.
Yeah.
And everyone will
And
call Don Sweeney an idiot for not doing it. But clearly from what you're saying, this was San Jose saying, we will trade for this player, whoever it is, if we can get this other deal done. So this isn't
yeah,
on Sweeney for failing to get this done. This is on San
no.
Jose and Mike Greer for needing to make a preceding move.
Yeah. Now, obviously, there's also the possibility of them moving out a goaltender, and it's not going to be Jeremy Swayman.
No, anybody calling for Jeremy Swayman to get dealt is just someone worth tuning out.
Right. So there has been some asking about Michael DiPietro.
I was going to bring up the image that you tweeted out the other day.
Yeah. By the way, it was also named the PHPA Player of the Year, which is voted on the players. So triple award winner. So there's been some talk there. Obviously, they probably want to try and move Corpusalo before DiPietro, but who knows where any of that goes. I just don't think they're done. They can't be done.
Which one do you think, DiPietro or Corpusalo, has more value in getting a return? I know you mentioned they were trying with that San Jose deal to get their third round pick. So could they use Corpusalo or DiPietro in an effort to get that pick from Columbus, who's looking at, they're looking at getting rid of Merzlikins. That opens up a spot behind Jet Greaves. Corpusalo's already been there, so I feel like that screams more DiPietro. So, like, clearly they're making a move to get their pick back. They have to move a goaltender. They have Mason Lohrei to dangle. Like, what do you think they target in amongst that grouping there? And what do you think holds most value to Sweeney?
In terms of value, it depends on what you're looking for. Are you looking for the cap space, or are you looking for somebody that you can use probably on your AHL roster? And to me, right now, the position that they're in, the biggest value is in cap space. So that would be Corpusalo. Theoretically, let's just use this as an example. Let's say DiPietro, and I'm not saying this is what he's worth.
Yeah, not reporting, just hypothetical.
Yeah, let's say DiPietro can get you a second round pick, but Corpusalo can only get you a third round pick. Obviously, the second round pick is more valuable, but not to the Bruins at this point. At this point, it would be the cap space. So you give up the 32 spots in the draft or whatever, and get rid of the cap space that you can use on something else that you have in mind of doing. So it depends on what they're trying to do to if you want to establish what is more valuable to them. So in terms of that, it would be Corpusalo.
Which one do you think has more value on the trade market, DiPietro or Corpusalo, to other teams?
I'm going to go with with DiPietro.
So he might be the easier one to move.
Yeah.
And do you feel confident if they move off of DiPietro, that basically leaves your third spot being filled by Simone Zajac, who just got re-signed for next season? Are you comfortable with that?
I'm 50-50 on it, but it doesn't mean they can't go out and get a third string goalie for $1 million they can stick in Providence and call up if necessary.
We saw them do it a few years back with Keith Kincaid. Those guys are out there.
Yeah.
I really like what Zajaczek's game brought this past season. I'm glad they brought him back. It will be very interesting to see whether it's Corpusalo, DiPietro, what that looks like. Obviously, Mason Lorai's name is still out there, so maybe there's a way to attach two players. We mentioned Casey Middlestad. You know, Don Sweeney has options, and he's gotten creative in the past. Remember when everybody
Well,
said you couldn't move off the Bolesky contract or the David Backes contract? He still
yeah.
found ways to do all that. So I have confidence that he can pull something off that we're going to look at and go, that ain't half bad.
Yeah, I still don't want to move Mason Lohrei. I want
I
to
don't
see what he
either.
can do this year with McIlvaine brought in to coach. I really do. I still have belief in the kid. He's got uh, too much talent, and he fits the way McIlvaine likes to employ his defensemen. So we'll see.
So I'm glad we swung it over to Lorai, because the same people who were clamoring to trade Mason Lorai are the same people who were upset that Owen Zellweger went for such a cheap trade price and Boston wasn't in on him. Now,
Hmm.
that move never upset me, because I always looked at Owen Zellweger and went, he doesn't make any sense for this roster. Yes, he's a good player, but you have Mason Lohrei, you have Frederic Brunet, you have Lindholm and Zadorov already on the left side. Where does Zellweger fit? And so the same people who wanted Mason Lohrei or Frederic Brunet to get an opportunity are now upset because they didn't trade for Owen Zellweger. Where do you stand on that whole ordeal?
Um, I personally, I would have preferred Nemec, but I wasn't going to pay that price for Nemec.
No.
Uh, with Zellweger, I'm 50-50 on. Would I have paid the price? Yeah, and then figured out what I was going to do after that. Um, whether it's move of Frederic Brunet or you know. First of all, I don't think Jonathan Aspero should be on your top pair. So
I think he's the first one they're looking to upgrade. I think they want to find a way to get the Zadorov McAvoy pair together and Hampus a partner, and then dabble around the rest on their bottom pair. Um, Now, I'm only bringing this comment up because we haven't really mentioned this player yet. Matrix says, I think Yoki Haru is the most likely to get traded. But I know you and I have talked about Henry Yoki Haru before, especially coming out of the Olympic break. And the big question was, why is he so good at international competition, yet he came back to the Bruins and was completely discarded? Was that a Sturm call? Or was that because as soon he started playing better as soon as Sturm took over the defense? They all did. So do you
mhm.
really see Yoki Haru as someone they look at trying to get another level out of now that someone else, McIlvaine will be on defense or Sturm will have more say in it, basically with Jay Leach out of here?
Mhm. Look, I know there are those that are very, very high or were very, very high on Jay Leach. I've been openly critical of him, as you know, for quite some time. I didn't think he was the man for the job. Sturm's job is to go in there and implement the system. Okay. Leach's job is to teach the defenseman. And they looked lost on so many nights um, that it became pathetic. Okay. So,
It really did. Especially at the beginning of the season when they were in that 7-game losing streak.
well,
It
not
like
only that, and I've said it before, the writing was on the wall to me following the Olympic break when Marco Sturm and Steve Spott took the PK away from Leach and took it upon themselves, made some tweaks, and all of a sudden it got better.
yeah.
To me, that was the writing on the wall that Jay Leach did not fit into what they were trying to accomplish. Now, it remains to be seen whether McIlvaine is that guy. I believe in McIlvaine, which is why I don't want to. I don't want to move Lori just yet. I want to see what he can do with Yoki Hairu and all the defensemen, really, um, because he's known to be a breakout specialist using his defensemen, and we'll see how that works out for him. So,
Yeah, it just I don't understand how you. I mean, I understand how it can happen, but I don't understand how fans can look at Yoki Hairu in international competition and then on the Bruins and go, he's the problem. Especially when the Bruins basically looked at it and went, he's not the problem. We're making this other change. So I just and they just signed him to this contract. I don't see them just giving up on him when he could be. I'm not saying he will be. He could be a very solid third pairing right side defenseman. I don't think he's a number two, but on your third pair, he should be able to give you something.
you would think, but I'm not surprised if they try and move him. It's $3 million on the cap hit. Can you find an improvement for less? I don't know. Everybody's looking for right shot defensemen.
That's why Brandon Carlo's name keeps coming. That would be hilarious. I just want to throw that out there. If they were able to get Brandon Carlo back, just on paper, it'd be hilarious. The trade with Toronto, just that much better.
Yeah, I don't want to go there.
But we were talking about the position on or McIlvaine coming in. We touched on it a little bit before. The head coaching position in Providence now vacant as Ryan Muginel goes to Manny Malhotra's staff in Vancouver. Obviously, McIlvaine has the spot in Boston as the assistant coach. You mentioned with Court yesterday on Bruins Diehards a great point that it admittedly seems a little out there when you first think of it, but I really like. And that was having Chris Kelly go down and become a head coach in Providence and opening up another assistant coaching spot on the NHL bench and allowing Chris Kelly to kind of take that next step for himself. Can I have you just kind of go into that a little bit more?
Yeah, that was Court's idea, one I never really thought of, but people would deem it as a demotion. But it depends on what Chris Kelly wants to do. Much like Marco Sturm, he started out as an assistant coach in the NHL, said he wanted to be a head coach someday. So he went down to the American Hockey League and gained that head coach experience. Something that Kelly might look at. Would I like him in the position? The more I think about it, the more I like it. I've been on this beat about bringing people from outside the organization for well over a year now. They did so with Marco Sturm. They did so with Steve Spott. They did so with Matt McIlvaine. Apparently, they did so with bringing Kevin Adams in. We'll get to Elliot Friedman breaking that news last night. I'm sure you're going to ask me about it. And I want to see it with Providence. Get an outside voice in. This is, for as much as I've been asking for it, Sweeney actually talked about it in his presser on Wednesday about maybe they became a little bit stale working together for so long as a group and some outside voices were needed. And I firmly believe that. I really, really do. So, there's some talk about Trent Whitfield being at the top.
That was the next question I was going to have for you. Yeah, because he was mentioned in the availability yesterday. Is he just going to get elevated to that role? How would you feel if that was what they did? Because I feel like that's more of the same.
Well, exactly. That's my that's the way I look at it. Has Trent Whitfield earned his stripes and earned an opportunity? Um, 10 years as an assistant coach now in Providence, I believe. So yeah, he's earned it. Doesn't necessarily mean it has to be with this organization. Where's the change? He's been part of the same group for as long as Ryan Mougenel has been there. And what do they have to show for it? Somebody
Yeah,
has to tell me, what do they have to show for it?
it's almost more like he was part of the problem than he would be part of the solution.
Well, I wouldn't call it a problem. He's
The problem of developmental deficiencies. I'll put it that way.
And winning. So do we want more of the same, or do we want a new voice, a fresh set of eyes in there? And I'm leaning towards a new voice and a fresh set of eyes.
I know some people have referenced, like you said, his duration with the team, his time there. He spent a lot of time with some of these players. He has the respect of these players. What would you say to people who make that? It's a good argument, but again, that's exactly why I look at it and I go, it's still more of the same. What would you say to those people?
I know exactly what I would say. And, I wanted to say it yesterday with Court. But chose to bite my tongue. But I will say
you can again if you want to, but
no, I'm not going to, because people are talking about it. So he's earned the respect of the players. He's worked with the players before. He knows the players, and the players know him. Okay, but I'm looking at the Providence roster, and I'm saying to myself, okay, how many of those players are still there? Okay, you have Zajac in net, who works with Mike Dunham, not the coaching staff. Maybe Michael DiPietro goes back there, works with Mike Dunham, not the coaching staff. On defense, you've got Billy Sweezy and Ty Gallagher. Up front, you've got Don Schmellis, who was injured most of the season. Let me bring up Providence's roster.
The only other ones that I don't see that I see having contracts, I mean, you mentioned a couple guys on the front end, are Biasca, who they just brought in, and Navrin Mutter, who they brought in at last year's trade deadline, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
Loke Johansson, Billy Sweezy. Those are the only guys under contract.
Yeah. So what ties does he have to the players?
I mean, not very many of them. I mean, There's a few RFAs on.
I think you muted yourself.
Sorry about that. There are a few RFAs on the list that you might be bringing back. I mean, John Sweeney mentioned that he's been in touch with every single one, so they all know where they stand. And with the exception of Matthew Poitras, who I think is going to get a qualifying offer versus a contract offer, maybe it doesn't go all the way. He doesn't have arb rights, but I mean, the only other couple that I see maybe sticking around are Riley Duran and Fabian Lysell.
Yeah. So again, I asked the question, what ties does he have to the players on the roster? Because over half the roster is going to be new, and over half of it, or most of it, is going to be depth for the NHL roster. There's not going to be any prospects there.
No, they're all in the NCAA now.
Yeah, there's not going to be any prospects. Yeah, you have Loke Johansson, you have Don Schmellis, you got Schmaltz, who's on an AHL contract, and Gallagher, who's on an AHL contract. Plus, you have the two goalies who are going to, again, work with Mike Dunham. So where are the ties?
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see how they handle that coaching vacancy. And then you touched on Kevin Adams, because we all know Jamie Langenbrunner was the assistant general manager, and Evan Gold has been the other assistant GM, but also GM of Providence. So, how involved do you think Sweeney will be in that new head coach hire, since they still have Gold, but obviously they almost lost him this summer?
That's Sweeney's responsibility. He's under whoever they bring in will be under an NHL contract. That's Sweeney's responsibility. But
Okay.
but that said, don't. It's got to be somebody Marco Sturm can work with, somebody who um can take what Sturm wants to do with the system and implement it for him at the AHL level.
That's why, as you said, the more I think about it, the more I like the idea of Chris Kelly doing that, because he knows the system.
Yeah.
And every other coach and person that's come back into this organization, with the exception of, a couple in the front office, they've all been defensemen. McQuaid,
Yeah.
he was a defenseman. They really don't have many other. Savard, not Savard. Sturm was a forward, but now he's the head coach. I don't know. Anyway, you mentioned Kevin Adams joining the front office. Let's pivot to that.
Elliot Friedman did.
Sorry, you mentioned Elliot Friedman mentioning Kevin Adams joining the front office. Let's pivot to that and dissect that a little further.
I think it was Ty Anderson who asked Don Sweeney about it, and he would not confirm or deny it, but did say that. How did he word it? That they used Adams as a resource, which tells me he had a little bit to say about the Peterko trade. But I will say this. Adams is still under contract with Buffalo. So I believe it's until September when his contract runs out, or maybe it's July. But anyway, he's under contract with Buffalo. Now, unless Buffalo gave the Bruins permission to talk to him, there's no way Don Sweeney could use him as a resource. He doesn't work for the Bruins. He's still employed by the Buffalo Sabres. So I don't know. People knock on it because of how bad Buffalo had been for years. But let's remember, the team that went to the Eastern Conference Finals was put together by Kevin Adams. It was his team.
Kekalainen only made a move on trade deadline day.
Yeah.
And he brought in a couple veteran guys to help their blue line, but they weren't even high impact guys in the playoffs. It was everybody else that Kevin Adams had brought in. So if you're asking me, I personally think Kevin Adams will be a great addition to the front office in that assistant GM role, because, honestly, look at his draft history. It's been really good. Has it been a linear straight line on every single player? No. But he clearly has an eye for being able to draft guys.
Yeah. So, and again, what was it? The Bruins drafted him 33 years ago. So yeah, he had been with the organization before, but it's 33 years, man. This
I think that still counts as from outside the organization.
I bet a lot of the listeners here aren't even 33 years old. So that's an outside the organization move, and a different voice and a different way of doing things and a different set of eyes. So again, that's what I've been screaming for. And if it's true and he comes in, then great. I think Don Sweeney mentioned Wednesday that the front office realignment would be announced within a week. So if Adams is joining the front office, I'm sure Don Sweeney is not happy about the uh, news being leaked. Now,
Right.
the question is where did it come from? I'm sure it didn't come from Kevin Adams because Sweeney wouldn't want him to talk about it. So it probably came from the Buffalo Sabres or Adams' agent because they have agents too.
Yeah, it doesn't really make much sense for Boston to put it out there. They don't gain anything from it. Kevin Adams doesn't gain anything from it. You know, and not that Buffalo gains anything from it, but they also don't get hurt by the fact that it's out there. So,
Yeah,
it could have been one of those things in passing, as they're talking about all these other things. Because Kekalainen was busy yesterday. So,
yeah,
that front office was definitely in touch with a lot of, a lot of insiders, a lot of people calling for info. So for something like that from that organization to get out, they're not going to think twice about saying, yeah, we don't have anything to do with him anymore. He's with Boston.
yeah. And the other thing too is that the teams weren't on site at the draft, so it's not like Elliot Friedman could see Don Sweeney talking to Kevin Adams and put two and two together on the floor because they weren't there. So obviously somebody leaked something to Friedman, and we'll see where it goes from there.
The only other thing I have, I know it's a little bit of a short agenda this week, but we also like to keep it straight to the point here. There's a couple questions that have been submitted during the show that I want to get to, but before I do that, I want to get from you if there's any other thoughts on the second day of the draft that fans should be expecting. I know you talked about you don't think they'll make all three picks in the fourth round. We've talked about how they're not done yet, but what do you expect from them today during that second round?
I expect them to try, with the exception of the picks, I expect them to try and make a move today to move out some salary, whether it's middle stat, whether they. I think it's too late to trade Zaka now because you're not trading him for picks in the second, third, and fourth rounds. Uh, that would have happened yesterday. So whether it's a middle stat, a Lori, or one of the goaltenders, I expect them to work on trying to do that today. But the later we go in the draft, the less likely it is that one of them are being moved today.
Yeah, I know I would expect some movement within the draft board from them. We know that's something that Sweeney likes to do, whether it's target someone and package a couple of those fourths to move up or something along those lines. I definitely think there'll be some fireworks there. I like the idea of trying to make another player move. I think the only way that you would move Zaka at this point is if you were doing it in a hockey trade that made sense
Yeah.
based on some of the picks from yesterday. Just as an example, we talked about San Jose before. If they're willing to part with some of their either newly found assets from yesterday or because of what they got yesterday, they're willing to part with some of their other young players in their pipeline, then you can revisit that, especially if you're revisiting something else that you might have had on the table. So there's some give and take there. San Jose is one of like five teams that are currently well under the salary cap floor. So that's definitely something to watch out for across the board when it comes to trades is who's under the cap floor. They need to bring in some money. Otherwise, they're
I
going
don't
to
think
throw money
anybody's
around on
under.
July 1st.
I don't think anybody's under the floor.
I think I saw last night 5 teams are.
Yeah, but they'll get there.
I'm
They,
not saying they won't. I'm just
yeah.
like currently though, they're the ones that can bring in some of the big money that's out there. I'm just trying to go back to some of the questions here. Um, Beamer had this one here, which is: are you worried that McIlvain was primarily an offensive coach with the San Diego Gulls?
Um, no, his not at all because um, his system was also defensive oriented, uh, almost similar to Sturm's, and that's probably why they work so well together. Um, Besides what they did together in Germany during the Olympics, um, he did well with the breakout system. And I think that's the key to what the Bruins want to do is puck retrieval and breakouts, and that's where they hurt a lot and why they were stuck in their own zone a lot. So if he can implement that, and you're bringing a Paterka who's great at zone entries. You got some other guys that are good at zone entries. Um, I think it'll work well together. So I'm not worried that he's so much an offensive coach because uh, he did have a defensive system that I think will work well with Stern.
Uh, he also asks, is the AHL largely dead as a player development league with the new major juniors to college pipeline? I know that's something we've
Absolutely.
talked about. I think
I don't
so.
think I don't think it's dead yet, um, but it will be. The NCAA is now becoming, if it isn't already there, the big development league for the NHL. When you used to draft players out of the CHL, you only had 2 years to sign them. Now you've got the four. The system is standardized, but um, at that time you couldn't stick them in the AHL. They had to go back to junior uh, until they were 20. So they had no options. There was no options, and that's why you see that the Bruins have walked away from some CHL players and not signed them. Um, but now, and you're seeing the majority of them, okay, they go there for their draft year, and then they jump to the NCAA. They get the AHL will now become a holdover league for a year. Again, Court and I talked about this yesterday, but um, look at Loke Johansson as an example. They signed him early. Um, you know, they stuck him in the AHL because there was basically no other choice, and never got a chance to play. He played basically half the season.
And he
Uh,
got buried in Maine.
yeah, if he could have gone to the NCAA, he would have got ice time. B, he wouldn't have only played half a season, and he'd be further along. You can go back. Same thing with Jackson Edward. His only option was to go back to the OHL, which he did, and then you had to sign him early again, and then to the AHL, and then no ice time, and you end up trading, and he goes somewhere else, and he's shown good, but
Now,
I guess you could blame that on how the Bruins used him. But had he gone to the NCAA, well, I guess Edward is a bad example because he had some serious family issues to deal with. But it's hard to say where he would be right now. So the NCAA has become the development league for the NHL, and the American Hockey League is just going to be a holdover for them for a year or
I
so.
agree with the overall premise, everything that you just said based on how it's unfolding. My only question would be how much of that is on the way the system has been versus the way the Bruins haven't been developing their own players, because they did opt for players like, veteran guys like Patrick Brown, Billy Sweezy, those kinds of guys over playing guys like a Loke Johansson or a Jackson Edward, because they were pushing for that Calder Cup. And obviously they never got there, but they didn't treat Providence the way that other teams treat their AHL organization either. So how much of that is on the Bruins versus the NCAA is just a step down, and it's easier for a player to make that jump?
I wouldn't say the NCAA is a step down anymore.
Was, I guess.
I guess I look at it like this: there's a difference between organizations um, that are owned by their NHL club and those that are owned independently in how teams operate. Because the ones that are independently owned, they have to make money.
Mm-hmm.
Teams like uh, the Toronto Marlies, who are owned by the Maple Leafs, they'll always make money because it's the Toronto Maple Leafs. But
It's the big club's tax write-off.
yeah, they don't care whether the Toronto Marlies make money. What they care about is that players like Easton Cowan go down there and develop. That's what they care about. The money to Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment or Rogers is that's like you and I losing a quarter in the couch. We don't care about it. So there's a difference in philosophy and how they operate. Um, so Providence, they want to win.
Yeah.
That's the owner's number one priority. If they were owned by the Bruins, who's to say whether they care about losing or money or not? We know how the Jacobs like to make sure everything is profitable, but I don't think their priority would be on that. It would be, hey, develop Fabian Lysell for us, develop Matthew Potter for us, develop Frederic Brunet for us. I, it's hard to knock their development when you see a guy like Frederic Brunet completely change his game, or you see Matthew Potter go down there and accomplish what the Bruins wanted him to accomplish while he was down there. But a lot of that has to go towards the player's work ethic. Um, I told you a few years ago in in the summer, in the off season, I said don't sleep on Matthew Potter making the roster out of September, only because I know what his work ethic is like. So a lot of that credit has to go towards the player and not really Bruins development system. That's my own personal belief, knowing some of the players that I had got to know what if I hadn't no clue what Matthew Potter was like, I never would have made that statement to you.
Oh, that's fair. And it's funny that you bring up Matthew Potter, because the other question I wanted to get to was Frisky Dingo's question. Why do people and Sweeney keep pushing Poitras? I'd like him to succeed, but he looks too slow, too small, and not skilled enough, and he just keeps getting beat up at the NHL level. We talked a little bit about him maybe fitting in on that fourth line, but this isn't something that I see out there a lot. So I'm just curious as to dive a little bit more into Poitras. I think his game has improved tremendously over the last couple seasons in Providence. And, obviously injuries were a little bit of an issue that first year, but I don't see him as a player who can't make it in the NHL.
Me either. And to say he's too slow, he's not slow, he's average. But skating is not something that can't be worked on and improved. We've seen bigger, slower guys like I was going to say Kevin
Christian
Adams.
Konstantinsky.
Well, he's improved. He's improved his
has.
skating, not to the level it should be at, but
it's a little easy to improve when it can only go up.
We saw Milan Lucic do it. We saw the defenseman in Boston years ago was Marshy's buddy. Come on, Chris. Name escapes me.
I don't know which one you're referring to. They've had
Was
a lot
Brad
of
Marchand's buddy. They did those hunting movies together.
Oh, Kevin Miller.
Yeah, Kevin Miller. One off season drastically changed their skating. So it's not something that can't be fixed. Not
Especially
skilled.
for a guy
I
like
wouldn't.
Patra with the work ethic that you were talking about.
Yeah, not skilled. I would say there's maybe 2 Bruins on the current roster that have his vision and his playmaking ability. Don't just look at goals. There's more to it than just that. And I've said this about Matthew Patra going way back to junior. The guy takes a beating, but he keeps getting up constantly. I remember one time that in junior that Jackson Edward absolutely leveled him. And the first thing that went through my mind was he ain't getting up. And he got right back up, got the puck, went down the ice and scored. Yeah, he can take a beating, but he's also in his time in the American Hockey League learned to avoid those kinds of hits. So it's all part and parcel with a player going down to the American Hockey League, working on the things that he had to work on and improve. And he's done that. He's rounded out his game.
He's also not that small. He's 6 foot, almost 200 pounds. Like, that's an average player. Like, in the NHL, maybe it's a little bigger than that because there are so many defensemen that are much bigger and taller, but he ain't that small of a person.
No.
So
and not when you compare him to forwards, if you leave the defenseman out of it.
Yeah, there you go. Even smaller sample. So I think that's all I've got on my agenda. Was there anything else on yours that I might have missed? We have a few questions in there from the viewers.
No, I expect today to be maybe not as interesting as the week leading up to the draft and last night, but I think there'll be some moves. I think when you're looking at that 33 to, I would say 45, 48, there are some really good players still available there. And I think you might see some jockeying to get into that spot. I think the Bruins will be one of them. Their pick is what, 56th?
Sounds right. I can pull it up.
They're I think it's 56, and then their next pick is the David Pastrnak pick, number 88. Yep. I call it the Pastrnak pick. Yep. They should actually have Pastrnak announce that pick. But anyway, I think the Bruins will try and be active today, and I would not be the least bit surprised if they make a move or two.
Yeah, I think it'll just be a matter of what is the move they make, and I think it's more likely to fall in the draft board, and we'll see who they end up targeting. With that, my only other thought is go Bees.
Yeah, go Bees.
Welcome to the Dom.Hockey Podcast, proudly presented by BenchRates. Created by a former hockey player, BenchRates uses a proprietary algorithm to assign a true monetary value to a player's on-ice contributions and lets you compare that value directly to his cap hit. BenchRates evaluates professional players across leagues worldwide, including the NHL and AHL. Learn more at benchrates.com. Also brought to you by McKeen's Hockey. McKeen's produces the premier NHL draft guide featuring more than 200 player reports and comprehensive rankings. They also deliver in-depth prospect coverage through their annual team-by-team rankings and their trusted hockey pool yearbook. Visit mckeens.com and subscribe for just $16.50 Canadian for 3 months.